Good morning and thank you for joining us for State of Texas in Depth. I'm Josh Hinkle. Today we have a great guest with us that you'll probably remember from many different issues here in Texas and even her gubernatorial run. Thank you very much, Senator Davis, for being with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh. I'm happy to be here.
So now that you're out of the political spotlight, you're putting your efforts toward another initiative. Tell me about this. What is it called?
The organization that I founded is a nonprofit organization called Deeds, Not Words, and it borrows from a motto that the suffragettes once used when they were working to try to pass the 19th Amendment and be provided the right to vote. Deeds. They wanted to see action, not just talk on gaining that right. It really was a perfect way of describing what it is that I'm trying to do right now. I have the privilege and benefit of traveling around the country and speaking to young women, and so many of them ask me, what do we do? You know, there's this sense that millennials don't care, that they're disengaged. Nothing could be further from the truth. But what they're looking for is a way to take their interest in these issues, their awareness about these issues, and move them into some proactive place. And that's what the organization seeks to do.
Your leadership history, you know, from the Fort Worth City Council to the Senate and even your gubernatorial run, how do you feel like that has really impacted you to want to try to make this type of difference?
One of the things that I see in this state, and we see it elsewhere as well, there's a disengagement. There's a belief that we can't make a difference, that our one single action or voice won't matter. And I know the opposite to be true. Certainly the day of the filibuster in Texas was a tremendous demonstration of what can happen when people gather and fight for something that they believe in. And we've seen that just in these last few days in the U.S. Senate and in the U.S. House last night with the sit-in that they conducted there. When people do decide that they're going to get mad enough about something or passionate about something to engage and fight to make a difference on that, they really do begin to move the ball forward in a very productive way. I want to make sure I'm doing as much as I can to capture the enthusiasm of a group of young people in this state and elsewhere who want very much to be a part of making change, who care very much about where we find ourselves, particularly of interest to me in the gender equality world, and what we each can do to help push that ball forward. A movement building of sorts. I believe in the movements that we've seen happening in this country today. It really is the one and only thing that ultimately drives change. And I want to make sure we have as many young people playing a role in that as possible.
Now, you mentioned two specific things. We were talking about earlier the Supreme Court decisions that have come down this week. You know, knowing that so many are focused on Texas and kind of seeing how those are playing out, we know that the abortion decision is coming one way or the other. You had such a huge impact on that initially because that's what you filibustered for so many hours, those abortion restrictions put forth by the GOP here in Texas. What do you think is going to turn out?
I'm very optimistic, actually. I'm optimistic because of the justices that have not yet authored a majority opinion. The two still left out there who haven't penned an opinion yet are favorable to women on this issue, protecting their constitutionally protected access to abortion in this country. And I feel that we not only are not going to get a 4-4 split, I feel like we're going to get a majority opinion in favor of women in this state and ultimately elsewhere, because whatever happens with this decision is going to impact women all over this country.
Now, this is just one part of the, numerous restrictions that we had been talking about years ago, but could this really have a ripple effect to maybe readdress those other points?
Perhaps, and it really depends on how proactive the court is in making the statement that they make. You know, oftentimes these opinions are written in such a way not only to determine the issue at hand, but to intimate at the very least and provide guidance about what is acceptable and laying the groundwork for the possibility of creating even more challenges to some of the overreach that we've seen on women's reproductive rights in Texas and elsewhere. So very anxious for the opinion. We think it'll be Monday, and obviously it'll be one of the most important reproductive rights decisions that the U.S. Supreme Court has made in decades.
Yeah, you mentioned also the Congressional Democrats and their sit-in over the gun control policy. Do you feel like that brings back some memories of your night standing up for so long?
It did. In fact, as I was watching that unfold and I was tweeting about it and applauding them for having the courage to do what they were doing, what was most inspiring to me watching it was that people were showing up in the gallery of the U.S. House. They were showing up around the grounds of the U.S. Capitol, and they were making sure that their voices were being heard, and that very similar to what we saw in Texas 3 years ago. That kind of momentum is really what's ultimately going to force a change in some of the nonsensical approaches that we have in this country to gun regulations. And I feel confident that if we continue to keep that heat up, continue to push hard for what 92% of Americans believe is the right approach to take, that we're going to see some common sense approaches to gun regulation finally occur.
Yeah, you had the tennis shoes, the back brace and everything. I didn't think it was fair that they got to sit down the whole time, right? So when we are talking about gun control, you know, with your history of voting, how specifically had you looked at how people are allowed to carry guns in Texas? And have you changed your mind since you were in the Senate?
You know, it of course is a long-held value in this country and in this state that people should have the right to own and to use guns. It's enshrined in our Constitution. But it's also enshrined in a way that speaks to the fact that it should be a well-regulated carrying of guns. I think where we find ourselves as a country, and when you look at what people think about this issue, people overwhelmingly support the idea that we should have background checks. People overwhelmingly support the idea that terrorists should not be able to walk into a gun store and legally buy a gun if they're on a watch list right now. That common sense approach has got to be the approach that's ultimately taken. And I think Americans are going to begin to respond, particularly because of these sit-ins and the filibuster in the U.S. Senate. It's bringing people much more present to the actions of the folks that they elect to serve them in the U.S. Capitol. And I think it's really going to be one of the things that helps make a difference as they begin to hear from their constituents, not the NRA, but their constituents about the behavior that they expect from them.
Yeah, I think especially with everything we've seen this week at the U.S. Capitol, I can't imagine that it won't be a bigger topic than it has been in the presidential race as we move forward. And I know that you've been a surrogate for Secretary Clinton out there on the campaign trail. What's that been like for you?
It's really been a remarkable privilege to surrogate for her. I've traveled now to 17 different states on behalf of her campaign, and I've met so many people that are passionate about the idea that we need someone in the White House who's going to work very hard at unifying us, at reshaping the conversation and moving us back to a place where we can talk across the aisle and work across the aisle. Hillary Clinton has a long history of demonstrating that she's very, very good at that. Not only when she was Secretary of State, working obviously across the table from world leaders with some very different perspectives and views, but also as a U.S. Senator and even as First Lady, working across the aisle to get some things done while she was there. So I'm confident that when she is elected, and I do believe that she will be, we're going to see some important improvements in terms of the trickle down of her perspective about that.
Yeah, but I can't imagine that, you know, when people see you coming, when you're out there helping her out, that you're a rock star in your own right. I mean, they've got to be excited to see what you stood for as well.
That's very nice. I do feel like I continue to have a wonderful audience with young people across this country. And I'm trying to take that privilege and use it for some positive purpose, and hope that some of the things that I have to say and some of the lessons I've learned in my life will be impactful for them.
Do you think that there could be a place in a Clinton administration for you?
My goal right now is getting her elected. It is my single reason for traveling as I have on her behalf. I'm very committed to making sure that we go that direction and not the other direction, which is going to take us down a very, very dangerous path, I think, in this country and in the world. So we all have a vested interest in making sure that she is the person who's representing us there, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure she is.
Focused on now, right?
Exactly.
Do you ever think about possible, run for office someday?
I do. I don't know what that looks like, and maybe it will happen for me, maybe it won't. I loved serving. I truly did, and felt like it was absolutely my calling. I'm trying to find a way to continue to serve and to be impactful on issues that matter to me outside elected office. So I'm happy with where I see things going in that regard right now, and time will tell.
Speaking of, one more time, remind people how they can get involved in your initiative.
Please, thank you for the reminder. Deeds Not Words is the name of the organization. Our website is deedsnotwords.com. We have a weekly newsletter that people can sign up for. And through the website, what young people will find are ways that they can actively engage in the work that's being done by a variety of organizations that are working to advance gender equality, whether it's in the reproductive rights space, in the sexual assault on campus space, in the economic empowerment space, equal pay, family leave, women running for office space. They can go there and use it as a resource and find ways that they can get involved and use their voices and their feet to make a difference.
Great. We'll put a link on our website, kxan.com. Just search for this story about State of Texas in depth. Thank you so much for being with us.
Josh.
Good luck to you and your initiative.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for joining us for State of Texas in Depth. Stay tuned for Meet the Press coming up at 9. I'm Josh Hinkle. Have a great day.